Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Sens Nation podcast. Let's jump right in. Some accolades that really kind of give you a sense the Sens are on the right track. A couple of things from the NHL.com website. They ranked two of the Ottawa Senators as number one as far as under 25 defensemen go, and as far as under 25 forwards go. Tim Stutzle and Jake Sanderson right in there, and I think a lot of Sens fans were pretty excited to see that. It's just a chart. It's just a top 10 list, whatever it is. But it is, it is neat that they have this organization has two of the very, very best young players in the game.
It's pretty cool, all right, Steve. I don't know the last time that you could say that the Ottawa Senators had the number one anything, let alone in this situation, under 25, two different positions. That's very impressive. It bodes well for the future, and hopefully with some of the new draft picks that have come along here and some of the new youth and depth that's going to come along in the future, more building blocks, this team's on a really good path here now.
Certainly both of them come from the 2020 NHL draft, and the Sens had two picks that year, number 3 and number 5. And you can make a very compelling argument that they might have if they redraft today, that you have the 1 and 2 ranked guys. I mean, is there anybody else, whether it's Lucas Raymond or Alexis Lafreniere or the emerging Quentin Byfield in LA, is there anybody in the mix in 2020 where you say, well, maybe I'd go with one of those guys instead of Stutzle and Sanderson?
I don't know that I wouldn't want to take anybody over them, Steve. I like what we have here. It's a pretty good haul of the two players, Sanderson and Stutzle. Out of the names you mentioned, I think Byfield's the one who's got most room for growth. His size dictates that he's going to be a much more durable player long term, and I can see him being the one that maybe emerges and comes out as a challenger at some point to Stutzle.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a fascinating thing because he was the guy that initially in the first 3 years after the draft, where people were saying, man, that guy might be a flat-out bust. He's spending so much time with the American Hockey League team with Ontario, and he was so sort of slow to catch on, but slowly but surely he's getting to be a more and more exciting type of a player. It's really intriguing to see how young junior players can seem to have all the tools. He had the size, he had the skill, he can skate. He just got this galloping skating style and tough to move in front of that net. He had all the tools. It just took a little while for it all to, I guess, be assembled into the toolbox required for the NHL. But what's been your thought on Byfield's kind of progress as an NHL player?
Well, I think LA was in an enviable position that they could take their time with him. Lafreniere went right into the lineup, and he struggled too initially, right? And I think in the case of Byfield, he's had time to develop. It takes time to figure it out mentally, physically. There's different things going on. The routines, the work ethic required. It's now a full-time job. You know, you're not a student playing junior hockey in the OHL. There's especially on the mental side. There's a lot to go on there, and physically too. Getting used to he's a bigger man, and expectations are different now, and you're playing against men, and there's all kinds of adjustments to be made. And different players react differently. Some players never get it, and some players take a little longer to get it. Some players can only get it right away. Case of Byfield, though, I think he was sort of like he was a can't miss to begin. All these guys were can't misses to begin with, and you can honestly say that none of them have missed at this point. While they may have stumbled or been slow to start, they're all on the right trajectory, and the future's bright for all of them, I would say.
It really is an adjustment. We've talked about it before, I think off the air as well, about that little moment of processing. You know, the junior level is one thing. You're playing mostly against guys who will never play in the NHL.
Right.
And then all of a sudden you move up to the NHL, and, and it's not taking anything away from major junior hockey. It's phenomenal hockey, but there's just that split second that's taken away. You have to do everything faster. And some guys make that adjustment nicely. It is an adjustment, but some guys cannot. And it's just always mystifying, I think, for the layman to look at the junior player who excels the way he does, and he just can't do it at the next level. But you've talked about it before, that split second, some guys can do it and some guys can't as far as that adjustment.
Well, the other adjustment here is not really adjustment, but everybody peaks. At some point in life, no matter what the skill, no matter what your endeavor, you peak and you're never going to get any better. Just watch my golf game. It peaked a long time ago. But in a case of a hockey player, you peak. Some guys peak at major junior. They're a super stud at 19 or 20 playing in a major junior league against sometimes 17, 16-year-olds, and they're like a head and shoulders above the crowd. And then they move up that step, and now suddenly, there's a 28-year-old guy on the ice. It's mental, it's physical, it's emotional, all the intangibles beyond your skill set, beyond how, you can shoot, you can skate, you can pass, you can stick handle. We all know that. You wouldn't get there otherwise. But how well do those other things kind of gel and develop within you to turn you into that truer, more all-around athlete, a true elite-level athlete who was developed to the peak in all those categories? And sometimes it takes time, but as we say here in this case, sometimes you already have peaked. You're not going to get any better. And that's where you end up with some of these flop draft picks who just don't work out because somehow or other they've already peaked and your scouts didn't notice that. It's not something you're going to be able to pick up easily. In the case of each of these players that we're talking about here, especially the Senator guys, like Sanderson has just gotten better and better and better and better, and he's still going to get better. Stutzle, I think, obviously still has room to grow too. So the Senators, that's the trick to drafting, is finding those guys and figuring out where they are on that curve, on that projection list. How much better are they going to get? And in the case of both Stutzle and Sanderson, obviously they're really good now, and they're only going to get better. And that's why you end up with both of them being number one at their position, under 25 in the NHL.
Yeah, and that's really intriguing when you think about this team moving forward, because Steve Staios is really hanging his hat, and I think the fan base is as well, that this team's greatest area for improvement for the coming season will come through internal growth. They have made some additions, and Staios likes to include the guys from the deadline last year, bringing in Cousins and Zetterlund, but also bringing in Lars Eller, maybe to a lesser degree Arthur Kaliev. Maybe he fits in there somewhere, but really that's it. That's been all the sort of exterior change that's been brought into the organization. The hope is that the big step forward that everybody's hoping for the coming year will be because of internal growth. So I'll ask the question. I think we can agree that you just mentioned it. Sanderson, yeah, I think he's as good as he is already. There's still more there. Stutzle, same kind of thing. But then I start to look around that roster beyond the guys I just mentioned, and I start to say, I wonder if there's a lot more there. Do you think there is a lot more room for growth? Like, if they're going to take a step forward, it's got to come from that internal growth. Do you see that happening for the coming season, or do you think they need to add more?
I think we all agree that there's definitely room for growth, and it will come for Pinto. There's no doubt about that. He's only going to get better. I think that the more responsibility you give him, and as he climbs up the lineup and gets better quality line mates and different matchups and stuff, I think there's a lot of room for growth there. A guy like Ridley Gregg, I really don't know. To me, he's a pest. He could be a 8, 9, 10, 12-year pest in the NHL. But the question is, does he end up being a Brad Marchand pest, or does he end up being a Brendan Gallagher pest? Or is he a Nick Cousins pest, right? Like there's three different levels of offensive production there from a pest role. But I definitely see room for Pinto. I'm not sure about Gregg. I see room for Zetterlund, definitely. I see room for Batherson. I think Batherson's main thing is mental. I really think he needs to learn to process the game at a better pace, more consistently at both ends of the ice, especially on the defensive side. We all agree. On the blue line, there's all kinds of room for growth from the two studs in the last two drafts. And then I don't know whether Artem Zub has peaked. Is Tyler Clevin got more room to go? We've talked about Matt Paolo ad nauseum on this show. Is that what he is, or is there more room for him to grow? So I think between the 8, 9, 10 guys here, throwing a lot of names out, but I think probably half of them, in my mind, have room to get better. Whether that's going to be enough, like Steve Staios has made a pretty big bet here, saying, yep, we're okay. The internal growth is going to make up for any deficiencies. I don't need to go finding players. I think internal growth is going to do it. That's a pretty big bet. And I'd say probably, in my opinion, I think half of them probably have room for growth.
Yeah, I just don't know. I mean, it's not that I'm saying they can't. A lot of those guys, Pinto included. Yeah, I feel like he's got a good shot, but do I know for sure the way I feel like, do I feel the confidence that I feel with Sanderson and Stutzle and, some of the guys you mentioned off the top? I don't know. It's going to be very fascinating to see if this team, because as we talked about, with the junior jump, right, you just don't know what everybody's ceiling actually is. Have they reached that ceiling yet? We're guessing. The player themselves probably don't even know. So it will be fascinating to watch. Yeah, this team could turn into a juggernaut, a dynasty for all I know. But, for the time being, there's a lot of guys where I kind of raise an eyebrow and go, I wonder. And only time will tell in a lot of the cases. Only time will tell what some of the free agents will be getting. There's a lot of guys on this team now, because right now Steve Staios has taken care of most of the business. There's still some RFAs kind of trickling in. Xavier Bourgault re-signed, got a 1-year deal this week, for example. And there's guys like Max Gannett still out there. Jan Yannick, I think, is in there as well, maybe a couple of others. But looking ahead to 2026, there are a number of guys that are eligible for extensions right now. And we mentioned Shane Pinto a moment ago and the discussion about, what do we expect? You're fairly confident that we have not seen the best of him, but he's also in a situation where he's got circumstances. He might have some blockages in front of him with, if Dylan Cousins has a heck of a year, maybe Pinto continues along on the third line. And that's a third line right now. If it is Amadio and Pinto and Greg, that's a line that as is already making between them like almost $10 million. So if Pinto's looking for a raise as well and he's going to stay on the third line, or is he going to move up? I don't know. But what do you think happens with Shane Pinto? Is Pinto going to want to keep? Is he going to want to deal soon, or is he going to play the year out? Or did the Sens want to deal soon, or let it play the year out? How do you see it?
That's a really tough decision. Imagine if you're Shane Pinto or Shane Pinto's agent, and you're looking at this, and he's penciled in as third line center. So do you go negotiating now and base that contract on upper third line center money? Or do you go in there demanding second line center money? Or do you say, hey, let's wait and see what happens? Because if one thing Travis Green has been true to, it's he plays the guys that are playing. So if Pinto's performing and playing well, he's going to move up. So do you take a chance on waiting? And the other side of the coin, the Senators are looking at the exact same thing. Do we offer him third line center money now and hope he takes it? And if he moves up, great, he's a bargain. Or do we offer him second line center? And if it doesn't work out, we're stuck with a contract, or it's probably somewhere in between, right? You're looking at top six, middle six money. Somewhere in the middle there is probably where Shane Pinto fits. But it comes down to, it's a game of chicken, really. It's, all right, how confident am I in myself? Or on the Sens side, how confident are we in our projections for this player? I really think, Steve, that come the trade deadline, Pinto, Greg, I think one of them's not here. I can see that happening. Come the trade deadline time, somebody's out there that can help this team. Like, assuming they're in a playoff position already, I can see some big chip being moved come trade deadline time. And what better than to move a UFA if Pinto's not signed?
That is interesting. I'd hate to see them give up on him, but my attitude could change entirely if Dylan Cousins suddenly rediscovers his world junior scoring prowess, becomes the workhorse from Whitehorse once again. Workhorse from Whitehorse? Yeah, that's it. That sounded weird as I said it for some reason. But yeah, I mean, it's not a case of black and white. There's a lot of variables here that go into the decision-making process. And this is a sign, I guess, that the Senators are getting better. This is not a problem they've had in the past. There's always been room for a good player on the team, but there's only so many, second line center roles or power play opportunities. And as you build depth throughout your organization, you're going to start to have these problems. This is the kind of problem that playoff teams have, and the Sens haven't been there in a while. And so, yeah, nobody wants to lose Shane Pinto necessarily, but at the same time, if he's going to be asking for big money or not very happy with his lot, and you can see the writing on the wall that Dylan Cousins is going to be a stud for the next 5 years for this organization, then maybe you start, addressing other needs or restocking the prospect cupboard, whatever it may be. But there's so many variables at play that could really kind of checker this conversation, right?
Yeah, and I'll give you a couple of comparables. Is he Zach Smith or is he Mike Fisher? Mike Fisher was here. Sorry?
I was going to say, or is he more than those?
Oh yeah, or is he better than those? Or is he Tim Stutzle, right? Like that's the question. And I like Zach Smith was a third line center, always would be, always has been, and eventually was a fourth line center, but had some glitches, had some periods here where he produced some nice numbers playing up in the lineup and got a big contract because of it, and then they were stuck with it. In the case of Mike Fisher was always, to me, a 2.5. He wasn't a number 2 center. He wasn't a number 1 center. He wasn't a number 3 center. To me, he was a 2.5. Never quite offensively gifted enough or imaginative enough to play with high-scoring players, but better than your average everyday run-of-the-mill third-line center. So is Shane Pinto, he's got a lot of their qualities away from the puck on the defensive side, but he also has some offensive skill that we've seen consistently, and he's one of those tweener guys, right? And until he gets an opportunity consistently to play top 6 minutes with decent line mates in good situations and power play time, until he gets those little nuggets, you're never really going to know the true potential. And that's the catch, right? We're right back to the same thing. We're going around in circles here, right? Until he can prove it, what are you going to pay him? That's the question.
The Ford It's a Big Deal event is on. Right now at Jim K. Ford, lease a 2025 Escape Active all-wheel drive from $198 bi-weekly at 1.99% APR for 36 months with $2,755 down. That's like $99 weekly. Plus a $750 bonus for eligible Ford owners. Like we said, it's a big deal and it's on now, but not for long. Visit Jim K. Ford today for details or online at jimkford.com.
At Jim K. Ford Lincoln, we say yes!
Here in Canada, we don't just make lights. We craft possibility, connection, and celebration, built right here by people who care about what they're creating. At Celebrite, we're made of all the colors of the RGB rainbow, each person bringing their own brilliance. Because when we come together, we make something brighter. Celebrite.ca, proudly made in Canada. I have the kind of the same vibe when I think about Leevi Merilainen, who just signed a 1-year contract. So his agent is going to be like Pinto. It's just like, did we not just get? We just sat down at the bargaining table here. If Pinto signs, in the next little while, that would be the 3rd contract that he signed since January of last year. Or 24. I'm talking calendar year here. So I think you're in a situation where. When I look at Leevi Merilainen, it's the same thing. His agent just signed a 1-year contract for his guy at $1 million, and he's going to be, the club has already said, barring anything unforeseen, he's going to be Linus Ullmark's backup. And I start to think about, okay, what's his situation going to be? Because he is arbitration eligible next summer, which adds another layer to things. Not to mention the fact that when we look at last season, Ullmark, who's about to start a contract worth north of $8 million. He'll be making something like $7.2 million more than Merilainen will, and was outplayed by Merilainen last year. I mean, I could see this season, even if it's a 50-50 scenario where they play equally well. But man, if Merilainen outplays Ullmark again, then financially, as we go to an arbitration eligible situation for Merilainen, it could get very, very tricky next summer.
Yeah, there you go. So there's the Pinto negative side of the Pinto situation. You made a decision on Merilainen 1 year. If he's awesome, what's it going to end up costing you the next year, right? And in his case, you've got even less control over how much ice time you give Merilainen or how many opportunities he gets to shine, assuming he's going to play at least 30 games as a starter, assuming there may be an injury or there may be a slump by Ullmark, so Merilainen is going to play no matter what. Like if you have something like that happen with the forwards, it's not necessarily Pinto who's going to step up. But when it comes to the goaltending, it's going to be Merilainen. So he's going to get his opportunity to shine or fail. No doubt. I bet there'll be 2 or 3 instances over the course of this season where we're going to be looking at Merilainen as the number 1 guy for a small stretch or even a long stretch. And we're going to say, all right, here's his opportunity. What's he going to do? And what's it going to end up costing the Senators based on what he does? Because they don't want to end up losing another one. Now, it's different people, but Gustafsson and Decord both look well, both look pretty good playing elsewhere. And different organization, different people in charge. But there's 2 goalies you lost. in the case of Gustafson, it was Talbot, right? In the case of Decord, it was an expansion draft. Like, you lost two really good goaltenders that you'd probably like to have here right now. So that's another thing that's dangling at the end of the road here with the Merilainen situation. Although you do have you have control of the player for at least another year or two.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see how that all shakes out. Do you expect Linus Ullmark to be the stud for this team at over $8 million for each of the next 4 years? Last season, it's hard to judge. New organization, new city for him and his family. He was dinged up for a lot of the year, and so I don't think that was necessarily the fairest of sample sizes. But now most of that stuff should be out the window now. He's comfortable in his city, comfortable with his teammates, and he is the undisputed number one guy he's one of the highest paid goalies in all of hockey. He should be in a good situation. Are you expecting Linus Ullmark? And keep in mind, he's never been a guy. I don't think he's ever hit the 50 game mark, and so that didn't happen last year either. So maybe this is the year it does. But what's your expectation for Linus Ullmark? Will he be the stud the Sens are paying him to be?
I think he'll be the number one goaltender. No doubt about that. And he'll put up the stats of a number one goaltender. I don't know whether he gets to 50 or more than 50 starts, though. That's the question. Historically speaking, as you just pointed out, never happened. I don't think it's going to be a 4-year stretch, though. I think that the contract's going to be a little bit of a millstone around their neck there by the 4th year. It's like, oh my God, we're still paying this guy 7.5 or whatever it is, or 8, and he's the backup. It's not going to last 4 years. That's the good news about this whole contract, is that it's only 4 years, right? He didn't get the 8 times 8 or anything like that. But yeah, he'll be the number one goalie this year, and I think his stats will show it. I think he's much more comfortable now in the room, around the players, with the system, all the changes that had to be made. He should be nice and comfortable. As long as he stays healthy, he's starting 50, 55 games, and he should be the number one guy.
I hope you're right.
Yeah. Yeah. So do I.
I think Sens fans certainly hope you're right. I mean, it's because it's all variables. He could come out and play just as well as he did last year in his good moments, but Merilainen, the guy had, like, his stats were crazy. He had 12 games, 3 shutouts. He had a 4th shutout in regulation that he lost. I think it was in the overtime or shootout against Washington. So that's a 30-year games. You pitched a shutout in regulation. That's that's pretty good. And so Merilainen could be a wild card that could affect things for Ullmark, even though Ullmark, through no fault of Ullmark's own, he might have a special goalie here, but again, time will tell. But the last free agent that I think is compelling out of the group, and this is the full list here. So UFAs, you got Giroux, Perron, you got Eller, Nick Cousins, Nick Jensen. The RFAs are Pinto, Merilainen, Spence, and Halliday. You've also got the wild card in there of Lassie Thompson, who would be an RFA, but if he doesn't play a lot in the NHL this year, he'll probably be a Group 6 free agent on the UFA side. But Nick Jensen is the one that, and we've talked about it quite a bit, but Jensen is going to be the very interesting free agent here as well. And I think it starts with the question, unlike some of the other old guys on the team, Giroux wanted to sign here. Perron wanted to sign here. Eller, Cousins signed here twice now. The difference with Jensen is he was traded here. This just in, you don't have a choice when you get traded. Well, next summer, Jensen will have a choice. So I think the variable discussion when it comes to him, and the very first question that needs to be asked is, does he want to be an Ottawa Senator after this season?
Yeah, and we can't answer that, right, Steve?
No.
We have no idea. So the only question we can address here is, should the Sens want to retain him? Of course, remind people listening, we're talking about next summer. That list you just read off is next summer's free agents. In the case of Jensen, I hate to go back on it. I often fall back on it all depends on people around him in this case, right? Like, how much development do you get out of Clevin, out of Matt and Paolo, out of Spence? Does Zub continue what appears to be a bit of a decline in the last couple of years? What level of importance are you placing on Nick Jensen in your lineup? And what level of importance has been forced onto Nick Jensen in your lineup come the end of this coming season? Like, that's what's going to play into it. If he plays a full season, close to, similar to this year, yes, he was injured, but played a full season with Thomas Chabot, if they have the same type of season together, then yes, you want to sign him at least for 1 or 2 more years, despite his age. But it comes down to so many things that right now we really can't answer it, because so many of them are completely out of Nick Jensen's control. How well do all those other guys play is far more important than how well Nick Jensen plays, right? I really think that's a larger part of it. Nick Jensen could be a trade deadline, could move him out at the trade deadline. If everybody else steps up and is playing well on the right side, then Nick Jensen becomes a trade chip as a rental to somebody else. So I think there's too many outside factors here influencing this decision to say now whether you want to keep Nick Jensen come next summer.
Yeah, I think I'm not the biggest fan this just in of Thomas Chabot's game. That can't be a big surprise to anybody. But he had his maybe his best season as an Ottawa Senator when Nick Jensen arrived. So it's not just about Jensen and what I believe to be a good top 4 right shot defenseman who plays the game the right way. Not flashy, but plays the game the right way. And Chabot has needed someone like that for a while. So I feel like his value doubles for that reason, but you also have to factor, will he lose a step after the injury? That we don't know. Does he want to stay? That we don't know. But I think right now he's so easily inside the top 4 on this team. And unless he takes a big step backwards or the injury takes him out, that's the only reason I wouldn't re-sign him, because I liked his game and I liked what he did for Thomas Chabot out there. And I don't see a guy like Jordan Spence, who's not a very big player. He's not out there thundering. I don't see him as a complementary piece for a Thomas Chabot, who still has 3-4 years left on his contract. So I see Spence kind of rotating in and out with Matt and Paolo. Is that how you see them, like kind of sharing that number 6 role?
I don't know. I think that Spence might be ahead of him. I think that Spence might be ahead of Matt and Paolo. I think there's your 7, right? Are we in agreement that those are the 7? Because there's other pieces too, like where does Lassie Thompson fit in? Matt and Paolo and Clevin had a lot of chemistry, and I liked watching that pair play. Like maybe it becomes a case of Spence is one of the 7, and he plays some nights with Clevin, and maybe you give Jensen some night offs here and there, or nights off, and Zub you give some nights off, and Zub tends to be injured. Like maybe Spence is more of a guy who flips in and out in the top pair or the second pair, subbing in more for the older guys, more for Zub and Jensen than he does flipping in and out with Matt and Paolo. Like again, it remains to be seen. There's too many days and games between now and even mid-season for us to try to project as to where these guys are going to be.
These are the dog days of summer, so this is what we do, though.
That's what we do.
That's what we do. But I might go the different direction on that, just, sort of thinking about it as we go, in that if we agree that Jensen is making Chabot better, Spence kind of leans more toward a Chabot type of a player. So I feel like when Spence, if Jensen's out of the lineup, I wonder if Matt and Paolo would be a better sort of top alongside Chabot, just in his circumstances. Would he be a more complementary piece than Jordan Spence would? Whereas if Spence is in the 6th role, he'd be a nice complementary piece for a guy like Tyler Clevin, who's that more stay-at-home kind of a defensive style, adding a little offensive mojo to him. So there's lots of ways they can go about it in terms of laying out the chess pieces. But you're right, there's a long way to go before we worry about that. Brady Tkachuk in the news. He was on the Coming in Hot podcast with our friend Brent Wallace and Jason York and Graham Nichols. And it was good to hear his dialogue when it comes to the injury factor. He got dinged up. I think he ran into the goalie or the goalpost in the Sweden game. He's playing for Team USA at the Four Nations face-off, and he was never really right after that, and talked about it on Coming in Hot that, it was kind of a groin kind of area, sort of a midsection area, but he feels 100% right now, and everything's going great in summer training. And that's a very good thing, because it's not just about the injuries behind you in time for next season. The injury seems to be behind him in time for a good summer of training, and that's a huge difference.
Yeah, that's the biggie, right? Like, you end the season on an injury, and we know you're going to be healthy come training camp. But there's healthy for training camp, and there's 100% healthy for training camp. There's ready to go for training camp. And that's good news. Whereas in the case of Jensen, although we saw him rollerblading and look good, we're not sure if he's going to be 100% ready because we don't know how much training he's going to get in this summer. But from everything Brady said, 100% now, full summer training, coming in ready to go in the fall. It's very good news. Very, very good news.
The Ford It's a Big Deal event is on. Right now at Jim K. Ford, lease a 2025 Escape Active all-wheel drive from $198 bi-weekly at 1.99% APR for 36 months with $2,755 down. That's like $99 weekly. Plus a $750 bonus for eligible Ford owners. Like we said, it's a big deal and it's on now, but not for long. Visit Jim K. Ford today for details or online at jimkford.com.
At Jim K. Ford Lincoln, we say yes!
Here in Canada, we don't just make lights. We craft possibility, connection, and celebration, built right here by people who care about what they're creating. At Celebrite, we're made of all the colors of the RGB rainbow, each person bringing their own brilliance. Because when we come together, we make something brighter. Celebrite.ca, proudly made in Canada.
The schedule came out this week, and I got thinking about Tkachuk and that injury, and part of the schedule is a big old long layoff for the second year in a row. Last year was the Four Nations face-off, and this year it is, or 2026, it's going to be the Olympics, and we know Brady Tkachuk is going to be going to that thing, as is his brother, and both the Tkachuk brothers got hurt at the Four Nations. You think back to, I hate to do it, you think back to Dominic Hasek and the adductor injury that took out what I think was the best Ottawa Senators team in history in 2006, in my opinion. Had Hasek been healthy for that, his numbers to that point, to that Olympics, were phenomenal. And he was not looking his age at 40, and he got hurt at the Olympics, and he was out for the rest of the season, as it turned out. The Sens apparently pleading with him to try and get back in there. He said, no, not right. And then Tkachuk gets hurt. So does that, as a Sens fan, does that give you pause for thought about, whether you want your stars heading out to not just doing stuff, they're not just out there doing something with physical exertion. You're doing something that you want almost as badly as to win a Stanley Cup. Right. So all of a sudden, in the middle of the season, we always talk about mid-season form and then playoff form. All of a sudden, you're going from 0 to 60 to mid-season form, right into Game 7 of the Stanley Cup final by playing at the Four Nations or the Olympics. I'm not sure that's good for business, but I don't think there's any way around it.
Yeah, it has to happen. We're hockey fans, and if I'm a GM of an NHL team, I'm leery of a player going and getting hurt. By the same token, if I'm the GM of an NHL team, I'm probably a hockey fan, and I want to see the Olympics as much as the next guy. So in that sense, I think GMs they've really got a tightrope to walk there on how they feel about it. But I mean, Brady plays a completely different game than almost anyone else in the world. They don't call him a unicorn for nothing, folks. So he is more apt to get injured. If anyone is more likely to get injured, it's Brady in the game that he plays. So that's the scary part about Brady going to the Olympics versus Tim Stutzle. Right? Like, Tim Stutzle is going to be there too, but he plays a different game and not as physical, yada, yada. We all know the differences between the two. So that makes me a little more nervous about Brady because of the type of game that he plays.
Jake Sanderson might be there as well. Maybe if Drake Batherson goes off, who knows? I don't think so, but he had 68 points this past year. He adds 10 to that. He's going to give people pause for thought. Not that he'll be able to get to 78 points by February, but I don't see it necessarily. But, stranger things have happened. Then you got Lars Eller might get there with Denmark. Shane Pinto, you never know. But I don't see. Yeah, Matt and Paolo, I think, would certainly be there, assuming he's not getting down to, you're getting way ahead of me here. Assuming he's Matt and Paolo doesn't end up in Belleville, I think he'll be fine on the Finnish team. He's been a good soldier for them. Ullmark will be interesting for sure. He got kind of the snub at the World Championship, like openly at the end of the season, asking, I told them I wanted to play, and they said, no. Different circumstances than the Olympics, where they'll have a big lead up to that. But maybe Ullmark's a quirky sort. Let's be honest. And so if he put it out there to the Team Sweden that he wanted to be at the Worlds and they said no, who knows how he'll interpret that or react to it. But yeah, I would say that he would be on the radar depending on how the season goes.
And Merilainen too.
Yeah, maybe
you could potentially have both goaltenders going. So,
yep.
Yeah, it's tough, right? Like, how do you, as a fan, you want to see your players do well on the world stage, and we just talked about it as a GM. It's like you're holding your breath and crossing your fingers the whole time. Every time they step on the ice, hoping nobody gets hurt.
Yeah. And you mentioned Merilainen there on the goaltending front, and Linus Ullmark. Some sad news from the NHL goaltending world this week. We're of a certain vintage where we remember the name Wayne Thomas, who was a big-name goalie for a time in the 1970s. He was Ken Dryden's backup in Montreal, played for the Leafs for a little while as well, and he passed away this week. Any memories of Wayne Thomas from when you were a kid?
It was a first-round draft pick, for crying out loud. Was he not traded from Montreal to Toronto for a first? Back when firsts got traded a lot. Look it up, folks. First-round draft pick got traded a lot. Some of his stats, I read his first ever pro game was a shutout in the American League. His first ever NHL game, apparently, was a shutout, too. So that's pretty impressive. You get wins in your first game, that's one thing, but get shutouts in both of them, too. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, playing for that Canadiens juggernaut, when you're thinking about trading for a guy, it's a lot of guys would look good on that Montreal Canadiens team playing goal. I've always said, and I grew up a Habs fan in the 1970s, and I've always said, though, what would Ken Dryden have looked like if he ended up playing for the California Golden Seals? You know, it's always hard to say that stuff. But anyway, not much of a eulogy there when I bring that up. But Wayne Thomas was a very good goaltender. And an Ottawa guy, too. I didn't realize he was from Ottawa. He grew up in Ottawa and, played for the Leafs and Habs and a number of other teams, including the Rangers, passed away this week. And so a tip of the cap and a sky point to Wayne Thomas and best to his family. So we'll call it quits right there, ladies and gentlemen, or unless you had any final thoughts, Greg, before we go.
You know you do that. You throw things at me like that.
I do.
Thoughts. Yeah, no, I'm good.
No final thoughts. No British Open, no Blue Jays.
No. It's Sunday night. We're recording. We have to get to the Red Blacks game.
That is true. Yeah. 1-5. I'm going to watch it. I watch all the games, but I'm not going to rush. When I turn off the cameras here and the microphone, I'm just going to take my time and kind of sashay. Well, there's the TV there. It's over there. This is the pseudo man cave along with being the studio. I'm not in a big rush to get over there because I don't have a lot of faith in where they're at right now. But thank you for being with us. Our website is sensnationhockey.com. And as well, check out the hockey news anytime you like. THN.com/Ottawa. All kinds of cool articles over there about your Ottawa Senators. Greg, enjoy your evening, and we will talk to you in our next episode.
Thank you, sir. Have a good night.
You too.
Yeah.